Hello everyone. So this is a video that I've never made one before, and I don't plan on usually doing them because I don't usually make TBRs because I don't stick to them, and I don't usually do monthly wrap-ups because if you look at my previous videos, I do a book talk on every single book I read, but this month I read a couple books that I just didn't have as much to say on, so I didn't want to dedicate a whole book talk to them. They all have blog posts on my blog, so if you want to hear my thoughts on them in a little bit more depth, then you can go there, and all my blog posts are non-spoilery, so you don't have to worry about being spoiled, but I just didn't have a lot to say on them. I'll be showing you all the books I read this month, even the ones that I did do book talks on just as a monthly wrap-up, and then I will be showing you a summer TBR. These are books that I hope to be reading this summer, and just to give you a glimpse of what you might see book talks on in the near future. But I also can't guarantee that I'll get through all of them because there are a lot of series in here and it gets pretty extensive. But let's start with the wrap-up. The first two books I have are The Edge of Never and The Edge of Always by J.A. Redmerski. And these books were pretty good. I think I gave them a 3 or 4 out of 5 stars. They didn't blow me away. They are new adult, so they're a little bit more risque and they have more mature content in them, so if you are younger, I don't recommend them for you. But if you are older and you want a contemporary, this is a good series. It wasn't awful, it just didn't blow me away. The next book I read this month was An Abundance of Catherines by John Green, and I read this book because I've had it forever and I really wanted to get through all of my John Green books. I have all of them and I hadn't read all of them and I wanted to read them all. I would have to say this was my least favorite of the entire John Green collection. It was okay, it was cute, it was witty because John Green's always witty and I always love his books, so it wasn't awful. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars, and I was satisfied, but it wasn't my favorite of his, and I feel like he has books that are much better than this one. Next, we have the book Why We Broke Up, and I believe I gave this book a 3 or 4 out of 5 stars. I've heard amazing things about it, but I just wasn't blown away by it, and I don't have much to say on it other than the pictures in it are beautiful and bright and wonderful. I think that the book was very true to a high school breakup and the heartfelt feelings and everything. I think I just didn't like the way it was written. All of this is a letter that a girl is writing to her boyfriend about why they broke up, and I think I just didn't like how it was set up. I also read White Hot Kiss by Jennifer L. Armentrout, and I loved this book. It was so good. I had never read a Jennifer L. Armentrout book before, but I had heard such good things about Jennifer L. Armentrout from Sasha over at A Book Utopia, and so I picked this one up, and I really enjoyed it, and it is about demons and gargoyles, and it has a love aspect, and it was just nicely paced, and I liked the narration, and it was just overall a very good book. The next book is probably my favorite book that I read this month, and that is Just One Day by Gayle Forman. I loved this book so much. It's just adventurous, and it's cute, and it's contemporary, and it was just something I needed. I've been reading so much fantasy lately, and this month was kind of my contemporary month. But this one just blew me away. It was so amazing, and I need to get Just One Year. And Gayle Forman's probably one of my new favorite authors because she is just so amazing. I also read Every Day by David Levithan, and I've had this book on my shelf forever, and this month was really the month where I tried to read books that I've had on my shelf forever and never got to, because I have been buying all these books and just reading them immediately, and then the books that I bought a while ago never get read, and I was getting really frustrated. So I decided to read this, and it was an enjoyable read. It was a contemporary, and it's about a guy or a person. You don't really know if it's a boy or a girl. And every day they wake up in a different body. But the trouble is, one day he wakes up in the body of Justin, and he falls in love with Justin's girlfriend, Rhiannon. And it's just about his struggle with how do you be in love with someone when you're never in the same body? How can someone else fall in love with you if you are never the same person every day? So it was pretty cool, and it was an interesting plot line, and I think that's why I enjoyed it so much. But it wasn't my favorite. The next book I read was another John Green book, and that is Paper Towns. And this book I loved because it had a road trip aspect and there was a little bit of mystery, and I loved the characters. It was probably one of my favorite John Green books. The Fault in Our Stars will always be my favorite, but this was a very cute one, and I gave it 5 out of 5 stars because it deserved it. It was just adorable, and I loved it a lot. The last book that I read this month, I just finished the other day, and it's actually a nonfiction book, and it is The Promise of a Pencil by Adam Braun. And this book is about Adam's journey starting this nonprofit called Pencils of Promise. And the organization builds schools and trains teachers for villages in developing nations. And it was such an inspiring book just because he, at only 25 years old, grew this amazing organization, and he did so much good, and he just followed his passion, and everything about this book just made me so happy because it really truly shows that the face of this generation is an amazing one, and people like him are going to change the world. Those are all the books I read this month, and I am so proud of myself because that's a lot of books. I challenged myself this month to read a book every 3 days, and I stuck to it, and I'm very proud of myself. And now I'm hoping that this summer I can stick to that, but I'm not sure that I'll be able to. But I'm going to show you the books that I hope to read this summer, not that I know I for sure will. The first one, and it's actually a series, but I only have the first book, so I plan to read Shadow and Bone by Leigh Bardugo. And I actually plan to read the whole Grisha trilogy, but I only have Shadow and Bone so far. And Shadow and Bone is about a girl, and she is part of this magical elite that was chosen by the royal court to defeat a neighboring country in the border wars. And it sounds really cool, and it's foreign, and I'm super excited to read it. Next, I want to read If I Stay by Gayle Forman and the sequel Where She Went. And I don't really know what these books are about. I think it's about a girl and her brother gets in a car accident and dies, but I don't know much beyond that. I've just heard very good things about Gayle Forman. I've read a Gayle Forman book, as you saw, and I loved it so much. So I know she's a great author, and I know that If I Stay is being turned into a movie, and so I really want to get to these books before the movie comes out. Next, I would like to read my 2 Jane Austen classics, Pride and Prejudice and Sense and Sensibility. And if you don't know what these 2 books are about, then you need to go look them up and you need to read them because they are seriously classics and everybody needs to know about these books. I think that everybody should read their fair share of classics because as much as contemporary and fantasy is awesome, you have to read the foundation for those. What were those? The foundation for literature. Classics are those books that built the base for all these amazing books we read today. And so I really want to read these because I think and I know that it's going to strengthen my appreciation for books. I have another series that I want to read, and that's Ruby Red by Kerstin Gier. And then I want to read the sequels Sapphire Blue and Emerald Green. And these are about a time-traveling girl, and I believe she lives in old time, like the 1800s, and I love that time period. I hope that's when she lives because it'd just be so cool. Maybe it's present day, but I hope it's old-timey. Like, look, it just looks old-timey. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe I'm hallucinating, but I hope it is, because I love old-timey London. I have so many series I want to read this summer, guys, and the next one is a selection by Kiera Cass, and then The Elite and The One are the 2 sequels. And the way I've heard these books described is it's The Bachelor, but a dystopian version of it. And I think that sounds hilarious, but I think it also sounds really awesome. So I definitely want to get to these books. The next book and its sequel that I want to read is The Archived, and then the sequel is The Unbound by Victoria Shwab. And I actually heard about these books from Jesse over at Jesse the Reader, and he loved The Archived, and I don't know if he's read The Unbound yet, but he's said awesome things about them, and I don't really know what they're about, but the tagline says, "Imagine a place where the dead rest on shelves like books," and that just sounds really cool. So I can't imagine that this book will be anything but awesome. I have a couple more for you guys. The next series is actually a lot of books, and I think I'm going to save this series for the end of the summer, just because I want to get through as many books as I can, and I don't know if I'll be able to get to these. And it's Game of Thrones by George R.R. Martin. And as you guys probably know, there's so many of these books, and they sound awesome, but I just want to get through a lot of books this summer, and I feel like reading this long of a series and committing to it and marathon reading it, I would have to read them super fast, and I don't know that I'll have the time. So hopefully I'll get to these books this summer, but if not, then definitely this fall I will get to reading them, because I want to watch the TV show. I haven't watched it, and I'd like to read the books before I do so. Next, I want to read the Lunar Chronicles by Marissa Meyer, and I only have Cinder so far, but it's basically about a world where androids and humans live together, they coexist, and then the main character is Cinder, and she's a cyborg, and it's cool. It's like Aliens, but robot aliens, and it just sounds awesome, and I'm definitely going to get to these books sometime this summer. I'm hoping to get through all of these books sometime this summer. There's so many. Luckily, the last 4 are standalones, and they are all contemporary. The first one is Me and Earl and the Dying Girl by Jesse Andrews, and this is about a guy, and he becomes friends with a girl with cancer his senior year of high school, and he says that it changes his life. And that's all I really know about it, but Raylene over at Pad and Prongs 07 loves it and raves about it, and I finally found it for a bargain price, so I decided to buy it. Next, I want to read Struck by Lightning by Chris Colfer, and this is about a boy, and he is an aspiring journalist, but in order to get into the college that he wants to get into to study journalism, he has to create a school newspaper, and he has to get kids to submit things for the paper, and that's basically what it's about. But if you don't know, I'm an aspiring journalist, so I feel like we can connect, the main character and I feel like I will really connect to this book. Next, I want to read the Booksplosion book of the month, which is We Were Liars by E. Lockhart. And if you don't know what Booksplosion is, it's a book group, and they pick a new book every month and they read it. And they discuss it, and they have a live show at the end of the month. And a couple of the booktubers that are involved are Jesse the Reader, Ariel Bissett, and Pullin' Bananas Books. And I don't know if anybody else is involved, but I do know that they always pick awesome books, and this is their June book of the month. And it's very mysterious. The synopsis tells you nothing about it, but I've heard there's deception and mystery, and it sounds awesome. So this is probably the very first thing I will be reading in the month of June. Finally, I have Stolen by Lucy Christopher, and Stolen is a contemporary, and it is about a girl, and she gets kidnapped, and she writes a letter to her captor as the victim and tells him about how she victimized her body and everything. But the twist is that, does she fall in love with her captor despite all the violations he has done to her? Wow, that is a lot of books. I'm just realizing that I'm committing myself to so many books this summer, but hopefully I can get through all of them. So now you know what I read in May, and you know what you can see coming this summer. I can't guarantee June. I know I won't get through all these books in June, but this summer I hope to finish all of these books, and if I do, I'll be super proud of myself. And you guys know that every time I finish a book, you can catch the book discussion on my blog, and that's always a non-spoilery review. You can get an in-depth review of what I thought, and you won't have to be spoiled. And then you know that I also create book talks, and those are spoilery, so when you do read a book that I have read, or you want to read one with me, then you can come and watch my thoughts on it and then discuss it with me in the comments. So I will list all of these books down below if you are interested in any of them. I will give you guys a link to where you can buy them for super cheap. So thanks for watching, guys. Bye!